It's a Tuesday at 3 p.m. You know what that means? Time for another DraftKings Best Ball Draft here on Stochastic, where we throw the shackles of DFS off. We hop into a best ball draft. We're competing for an NFL season that starts in 30 days, $15 million overall in the prize pool for the DraftKings Millie Maker. And of course, I'm already in a draft room here. We're going to do what we always do. We are drafting here on Stochastic. Number one, being mindful of the average draft position, the ADP that you see on screen here. Very important to use ADP and draft players around it because basically your ADP is a combination of the projection you use for DFS, ownership projection you use for DFS. That's what ADP is rolled into one, basically. It's a market price that tells you should take Jamar Chase at the 101. You want to take Bijan? Sure. You want to take Saquon? Sure. You want to take CeeDee Lamb if you're getting 150 drafts in, get some different exposure? Sure. But probably don't take Brock Bowers at the 101 because your team's going to be dead in the water even if he is the greatest tight end to ever play fantasy. Number two rule of thumb here is we always talk about stacking and correlation, very important as well. Much like in DFS, QBs plus receivers, tight ends, things like that, all going to look very important, but you can stack up more than you would a normal DFS slate because of the fact that you are trying to get the rising tide of a team over the course of a season. Very important to know that in best ball. So QBs, RBs, wide receivers, tight ends, stack plentifully if you want. I mean, don't stack up every single guy. You guys know that. But in general, you'd stack up more guys than you would in your average NFL DFS slate. And third rule of thumb here, the most important one in my opinion, is remembering that expected value is realized in week 17. People get really caught up in the concept of advance rate, which is how many teams are advancing into the playoffs week 15. But that matters, but what matters more is having teams that are built for the finals, ready to kind of compete against this 1,000 plus person field on DraftKings, a little bit less than some of the other major sites out there. The main thing is building a team that can spike late, that has enough wide receiver firepower, enough running back firepower as well. If you are drafting wide receiver heavy, you still got to draft enough of all the categories overall to make that team work. So week 17 correlation, another thing people always ask about. And in general, just look up the week 17 schedule. You'll know then that the Falcons play the Rams, that the Bengals play the Cardinals, that the Eagles play the Bills. I know them all like the back of my hand because I've been drafting teams all year long and drafting even more since the schedule released in May. Basically, that's the week 17 correlation we talk about here, is trying to get those game stacks together because theoretically, if there's an outlier game environment, there's going to be profitable fantasy scoring going on you're going to want in the playoffs. We're up here at pick 9 here. Christian McCaffrey falling a little bit in this room. Not the sexiest, not the most fun click, but certainly on a site like Stochastic where we do revere the world of projections, McCaffrey, you'd expect to on a weekly basis have an 18, 19 fantasy point projection. I'm on Stochastic for the full point PPR sites like DraftKings. Certainly a player for Christian McCaffrey. I've given many times on this channel and my own @SplashPlayPod channel on YouTube/Twitter, where I talk about the stuff, of course, doing my own best ball drafts across every platform. For McCaffrey, the biggest thing that stands out is that last year, his red zone role, the limited time that he played, kind of diminished significantly. McCaffrey only had for himself, and again, for most running backs, it's to be good. For him, it's not enough. 1.6 red zone rushes a game. 1.8, red zone rushes a game. 1 flat red zone targets a game. So for him, 2.8 red zone opportunities. You think, oh, that's not bad. And it's not bad if you're a lesser back. It's not bad if you're David Montgomery. It's not bad if you're Joe Mixon, though Joe Mixon does have more. It's not bad if you're one of those guys. It's not great if you're Christian McCaffrey and sort of the main thesis of you as a play. So you're going to get a ton of volume. You're going to get all the high value touches. And this year, we have Garendo banged up already, hamstring injury or groin. I forget one of the two, but soft tissue injury for Garendo, which worries you a little bit. That's a guy that if he's healthy, I do expect him to take some work away from McCaffrey to kind of keep McCaffrey healthy for a team that I don't think is a Super Bowl contender anymore, but they certainly have a Super Bowl ambitions for themselves. But we got McCaffrey. We now have a falling Ashton Jeanty. So I'm not crazy about Jeanty where he normally goes, but at pick 16 here, I think it's kind of unique to have a McCaffrey Jeanty build. So I'm going to do that. Starting 2 RBs here. If I were on my Splash Play channel, I would play my RB Piggy GIF to show that normally when you are loading up on RB a little heavier on in these drafts, it can be something that does make your team less good as a result. But here, getting Jeanty at pick 16 when he's normally going at pick 12, that's what we're talking about with ADP and being disciplined for our average draft position and soaking up value. So a McCaffrey Jeanty start, I'm sure it's existed, but fairly unique for me at the very least. Shout out Steven here with the early money bags. Appreciate that. And Matt, glad to see a Stochastic member watching this one. My guy Chunk watching as well. People in my PPR league say my team is not it. Can you possibly let me know if what? What are you talking about? What? Your team in your PPR league is not good. You would pick 1-3. Edward, drop it as a super chat and I'll try to answer it, but I don't really. I don't know. Not my priority here. Other stuff to know news-wise going on right now. There's a lot of injuries floating around. A lot of guys floating in and out of practice. A.J. Brown had hamstring issues a couple days ago. I don't believe he's returned yet, but I haven't seen the reports from today because I've been on stream all day. Tyreek Hill going at pick 13 in this room. He's a guy that I really feel bad about this season because of the fact that, number one, his performance last year fell off a cliff, wasn't as efficient in some of the metrics that I swear by, like the expected points added, EPA metrics, in particular Sports Info Solutions is my data provider for that. But also stuff like target earning. His target earning was under 30%, appears being above 35% the year before that. Just didn't get the same level of touches, wasn't as good with them. I'm very low on Tyreek. To see him go at pick 13 here, it's kind of jarring now that we're just kind of looking at the board a little bit more. Out of all the teams building right now, I'm happy with my somewhat unique McCaffrey Jeanty start. Definitely some fun starts here overall. I feel like getting Bijan and Jonathan Taylor, Saquon and Bucky Irving, two starts that I also get tempted into a lot because you want to have that good RB projection, even though getting quality wide receivers is really an important part of best ball that sometimes people miss as they take 4 RBs in the first 5 rounds, something like that. But in general here for how these teams work, as long as you take your 2 RBs early and then you really add draft capital on for your receivers after that, you can pull off these kind of builds, I think on DraftKings especially, easier than ever. But for me, when I'm taking the 2 hole, taking the 3 hole, pause, shouldn't say taking it in any hole. When I'm taking it one of those holes, I do normally like to build a 2 RB start, take the receiver in the 3rd round. I think it's a pretty cozy way to build. Obviously, you still want to get your exposure to guys like T. Higgins, Trey McBride, and all that with an anchor RB, sometimes like Bijan and Saquon. But for me overall, definitely more RB-heavy builds usually go into the beginning of a draft. But other injury stuff going on right now. Actually, other news that's important. Kyren Williams, a guy we're seeing go on the board. And as I see the guys fly by, I'll try to highlight if there's anything important about them. Kyren getting a pretty good amount of new money. The people that don't like him will point out the money he's getting is kind of in the Alvin Kamara or Ramondre Stevenson tier. For me, I would say it's pretty close to the Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry tier of money, but $23 million guaranteed for Kyren Williams, 3 years, $33 million. A pretty good deal for a guy who is an absolute nothing prospect who did very little his rookie year. Some could say due to injury. I could say because I don't think his talent level is incredibly high. But getting that guaranteed money coming in does mean a guy feels a little more concrete, a little more solid overall. And I do think for how Kyren Williams is getting drafted, he's probably going to go a little bit higher now because he got that guaranteed money. People really want to see him get usurped. Guys like Blake Corum and Jarquez Hunter, the rookie. Elite QB feels pretty aggressive to take when we haven't got any receivers in. So I'm going to go up and get Mike Evans. I personally prefer Evans to Marvin Harrison, though ADP-wise, Harrison's probably the higher click and has been for most of the draft process. But at this point for me, I think there's a shot for this team being somewhat unique with McCaffrey and Jeanty. I want to build my receiver projection a little bit stronger, and I'm not sure that Harrison's a guy I trust as much as Mike Evans, which is probably a little bit crazy given that just the age difference between the two. But Mike Evans is here. One thing which I hadn't realized, I saw it on Twitter a couple days ago. And obviously Mike Evans, if you guys have followed football at all, you probably know he's had this 1,000 receiving yard thing for multiple years in a row. Keeps hitting that mark. It's a really impressive run. This year he could tie or beat Jerry Rice. I actually should probably confirm that before I say it out loud. Jerry Rice consecutive 1,000 yard seasons. So he had 11. Mike Evans is 11. So Mike Evans would break that if he gets 1,000 this year. Either way, he's tied with Jerry Rice right now. That is the kind of thing for Mike Evans, a guy who's clearly chased this record for a while. You would think he'll probably hold in some esteem for himself. So that's how I feel about that one. We're on the clock, though. Enough of my meandering. We really need to make it up at receiver. DJ Moore, I think, will help us do that. Jaden Daniels, though, an elite QB who tempts me a lot. But I am going to go DJ Moore here. I feel okay about my Jaden Daniels exposure right now. Don't know that I need to force more in here. And I think we need a lot more overall projectable points at receiver because this McCaffrey Jeanty start. So I am going to go DJ Moore. DJ Moore getting some touches out of the backfield for Chicago as well. So some decent signal for him. But basically right now, DJ Moore, I think, is the player we need the most. Team so far, McCaffrey, Jeanty, Mike Evans, DJ Moore. And Jamie pointing out that the McCaffrey Jeanty start was not as unique at the beginning. That's true. McCaffrey did go close to the turn, but at this point, it's still a different cycle of news and players are aligned differently. So it's unique for this time period is a better way to look at it. But you're right to say that it wasn't a unique combo in terms of the entire thing. DraftKings at this point did the math before. I think just shy of 50% filled, might be a little bit over that. So DraftKings filling at a pretty decent clip. I think still a pretty good shot of there being overlay. Make sure you are playing on DraftKings. Use a promo code, which is no promo code on there. Just go over to DraftKings right now, download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app, and go really right now play for free if you do get one entry, your first entry in. Because when you put in that first entry, they give you one entry for free. Really, you get 2 shots immediately at that $15 million prize pool on DraftKings, the big selling point, including $2 million up top, which is more than you're going to get your weekly Millie Maker slates and things like that. So Best Ball provides you, I think, your best shot at those massive paydays relative to the data and how figured out the sport is or the game is. If you're playing for $2 million on a DFS slate, you would find the best players in the world who have won tremendous amounts in DFS over the course of countless slates playing in that tournament. Here in Best Ball, there's basically been like 5 slates of real size across the industry. There's been more than that on some of the smaller sites out there, but you're basically getting a sport or a game that's not as figured out. And that's where you have some more upside overall. We're doing things like trying to get unique builds, doing things like, I really wouldn't go crazy on exposures and things like that, but really trying to give yourself the best shots at lotto tickets overall by building with good construction, following ADP rules, following stacking and week 17 correlation and things like that. You'll have a really good shot at winning that money relative to what you would, I think, in a given day in DFS. And obviously, this is stochastic, so you see winners winning all the time. I think for Best Ball, your shots are randomized in a positive way for you to have those results. So play on Best Ball in general, play on DraftKings this year because they are giving you a lot of benefits. If you max out the tournament as well, you get $300 in DK cash. So some good stuff going on in there if you are basically playing rake free in this tournament and maxing out. So keep that in mind playing on DraftKings this year. Of course, the presenting sponsor of these Best Ball streams on Stochastic all summer long. And shout out to all you guys hanging out in chat. Feel free to pop in with any questions, news items, things you want to talk about. I did see during the, in between streams for me, I had about 20 minutes between my Splash Play stream where I draft in this tournament, Underdogs Best Ball Mania, and the Drafters main event championships. So the 3 big ones out there where you could win the biggest amounts of money. I did that stream before this one. Breece Hall apparently got taken off the field today. I'm not sure how serious it is, but it's one of those things where really over and over again, we keep seeing things. I mean, the Jets themselves had the Justin Fields injury a couple weeks ago where he had a dislocated toe. People panicked. He fell in rooms. He was basically back practicing within 3 days. That's sort of where we are, where things right now, where a lot of these injuries are ones where you probably shouldn't be that worried about it. You probably should be absorbing the ADP value you get from a guy like Zay Flowers missing practice, A.J. Brown missing practice, things like that. Speaking of, we have Zay Flowers here. James Conner, also a player I'm pretty comfortable with. I think we need to make it up at receiver more, and Zay Flowers on the PPR site. Guy did not have great touchdown equity last year for Baltimore. I don't know that it gets better with DeAndre Hopkins being in tow. I think for Zay Flowers, he's probably just due for positive touchdown regression from the fact that he was targeted a good amount, was pretty efficient with it. Zay Flowers' numbers I'm actually curious about because I don't really recall them offhand. Zay Flowers last year, 0.3 EPA per target, according to Sports Info Solutions. So that's a pretty good number there. 26% target per out run is good. Generally, over 30 is where a guy, I think, really starts to stand out the most. 0.4 red zone targets a game is a pretty dog shit workload for a star receiver. So the red zone opportunity wasn't really there. He also wasn't great on deep balls, only a 0.01 EPA on those plays. Guy who's good is going to probably give you at least 0.5. So Zay Flowers, I think, which should be better on deep plays to get better results overall. But the lack of red zone equity, 0.4 targets a game in the red zone is not a lot for a star receiver. On half-point PPR, you maybe could dock Zay Flowers a little bit more for that. For DraftKings, though, the PPR format, the 100-yard game bonuses as well, I think that's where you get a little more of a benefit from Zay Flowers. But still, happy to take him in the 50s. Thought his numbers would look a little better, though, to be honest, just off the top of my head. We got a pick coming up here, though. Caleb Johnson goes here. He is not ahead of Jaylen Warren right now in camp. He doesn't have to be, but he's definitely not right now. DeAndre Swift, the running back I like a lot. Receiver does fall off the cliff a little bit here. Deebo Samuel, another guy I like a good amount for his touchdown equity. Jacoby Myers, price tag's coming up a little bit, but for PPR, I think he's still a nice click. I'm going to go Deebo here. I think DeAndre Swift, the player who's probably going to fall a little bit throughout this last month of the training camp period because of the fact Chicago is one of those teams where they've been not getting rave reviews of how the team has looked in practice. And I talked about this on my Splash Play stream right before this as well. Check out my YouTube channel at Splash Play Pod if you want to see longer versions of me drafting on more platforms and talking about similar stuff. But for teams like Chicago, teams like Tennessee, teams like the Jets, where the camp reports are not very good, but I still believe in the coaches there. You know, Ben Johnson getting paid an incredible amount of money to leave Detroit and hopefully fix Chicago for the final time. I guess not the final time, but, you know, fix Chicago after they've been so broken in so many different ways for so many years now, at least offensively in particular. That's something I still believe, like, he was the right choice for that. And the fact the team is like looking like dog shit early on, or up and down at the very least early on, it's something where I would hope that Ben Johnson enacting his will on the team is going to make them better the more that we go through. So I'm willing to keep taking Chicago players where they are. You know, if they fall in rooms even more, people aren't as sold on the offense. Same thing for the Jets, where Justin Fields has not been the most accurate. People are now starting to panic about the fact that they could bench Fields at some point this year, go to Tyrod Taylor. If the offense is running well, you're just better off, in my opinion, playing into the positives for these teams, especially now that people are down on them. You know, there's bad signal for some of the teams as well. Like, the Jets have been a team in terms of the look-ahead Vegas totals, you know, bottom 5, I think, across those numbers with the Jets overall for the year. You know, Fields, we certainly know the flaws. I think for Fields, what stood out to me the most last year was that the accuracy numbers took a pretty big leap to middle of the pack in the NFL, playing under Arthur Smith. So to me, that showed me for Fields that, like, he can play well if the coaching is there. If the coaching is good and scheming him in a way to not fail, basically, that player will do well. So it really comes down to your personal risk. And I think a lot of people out there do kind of can go both ways, you know, on this stuff, where sometimes there's people that will go, you know, I believe in the stuff like me. Like, I believe in the research I do in advance. I believe in the knowledge base that I've accumulated of how offenses run and how football works, from, you know, having played DFS and gambled for a while, but also I worked at Football Outsiders, ran things behind the scenes there. So, like, I have different perspectives on football than some people do. But at the same token, like, if you just hear bad reports over and over again for teams, you know, in the preseason, you might want to follow that. It just kind of comes down to how you play the game. Certainly, I would think you would make the most money overall by following the news cycles throughout. And just, if teams sound like dog shit, like Cleveland sounds pretty bad, Houston doesn't sound great, like Nick Chubb can't get to the second level at all. And that might be Nick Chubb being old and slow and all that, but seems like that run game's not running well. If you want to fade aspects of things where this reporting comes out and there's a drumbeat saying one thing or another, I think that would be a logical approach. Certainly, and if you follow all the news and follow depth chart stuff, especially, you're going to do better than somebody who doesn't. But it is one of those things where people become prisoners of the moment a little bit. And no, I haven't seen any highlights of this guy. That means he's not a good player. It's not necessarily how it works. Hearing a team's up and down in practice, the ups might be the thing they hit more of in the regular season, and that might be what you get to. So, you know, it's one of those things for me that your mileage may vary, but definitely a time of year to get sucked in on both sides of the equation. We're on the clock here. Baker Mayfield feels like a pretty good click to me at pick 81. I really, honestly, how Baker Mayfield played last year, I think people are on it because he certainly gets picked early enough in some of these rooms. I've been in stream DraftKings rooms where Baker Mayfield has gone top 60 from somebody reaching a little bit too aggressively. So I think people do value Baker Mayfield out there. The fact that he ran pretty well, ran pretty aggressively in the red zone at times, and the fact, too, that Tampa Bay's offense looked so good last year. They lose Liam Cohen, but promote from within. Josh Grizzard was the passing game coordinator. Now he's the OC. Seems like they're keeping a lot of the same tenets of the offense. I think for me, Baker Mayfield is still a very strong click. Low on Igbuka, but high on Baker Mayfield still, at least in terms of how I view him. TJ Hawkins is banged up in practice. He goes here. I would absorb him as well. Like Jordan Mason, do you think he has a lot of touchdown equity for Minnesota? Joe Mixon falling in a lot of rooms. So let's see where he falls here. Mixon, to me, a player that, frankly, pick 80, I would still be willing to take him. Pick 75, I'm frankly still willing to take him. There aren't a lot of guys in football. Actually, just looked this up on my last stream. There's 9 guys in football last year who had over 20 intended touches a game. Joe Mixon, number 6 on that list, behind some names that you'd be really impressed by. For Joe Mixon, and I'll list them here, he's behind Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara, Kyron Williams, Bijan Robinson. Then it's Joe Mixon, 21.2 intended touches a game. Derrick Henry at 20.4. And yeah, obviously Derrick Henry was much better with it. Frankly, thought Derrick Henry put up one of his best years. He missed tackles at 20% clip, did a lot of stuff that a lot of guys getting that level of volume don't do. But Mixon was good enough last year. I mean, he had a negative .04 EPA per rush, which is fine at that level of volume. Still a positive EPA per pass or per target, 0.01 EPA there, and had also not 5.9. Sorry, that's Kyron. He had 4.7 red zone opportunities a game as well. So 4.1 of those were runs, 0.6 were targets. He had meaningful red zone work last year too. I think Mixon's one of those guys to me that the markets don't like him. Some of the analysts out there pointed out, like in general, people are down on Mixon because he's old. He's not terribly exciting. Doesn't miss a ton of tackles, the fun stuff that people like, and guys like Gibbs and Bucky Irving as well. He doesn't do any of those things, so people kind of wanted to double count. It seems like, Mixon having this foot injury. And look, the foot injury, the uncertainty around it, like I get people don't love it, but Mixon was a guy who's been going at pick 50 for an entire cycle of a draft. I think you just absorb that if you need an RB, because like the upside is much bigger than a lot of dudes in this range who are just kind of timeshare backs. And I get people are going to be afraid of the injury. Like people don't like the unknown. You're playing a tournament with 800,000 entries on DraftKings, almost 900,000. You got to take on risk, I think, to have the upside you need to win these tournaments. So King Reed here takes Joe Mixon. I just think that's what you do. Takes Mixon. Oh, and Dak Prescott. Interesting team here. Checking the chats here. Grizzard sounds too much like Lizard. I don't think it's a reason to downgrade him, but sure. Struggling with Green Bay wide receiver options one, but trying to balance my usage. For Green Bay, I mean, Matthew Golden seemingly doing the right stuff. Jaden Reed had a period where he was playing outside and they stopped doing it. I don't think it's a good sign for a guy who couldn't get outside at all last year, is basically playing only out of the slot. It's really not a big Jaden Reed believer overall. But Golden, I think, has upside. I just think people are going to be really disappointed with the target earning because he didn't really earn targets at Texas and he wasn't competing with very much to do that. Now he's competing with a room that's pretty good. There's a highlight today of Romeo Doubs catching like a 50-yard touchdown. Doubs is still like the guy that Jordan Love's going to look to in the really do or die spots. And Wicks has been hurt in camp, and I think that's part of what's opened up more opportunity for Matthew Golden right away. Like Wicks, I think will be heard from this year. Again, he had a 30% target route run last year. You don't fall into that if you're any sort of player in the league who played at any volume. So I'm not sure who I'd say the wide receiver one is. Relative to ADPs, though, the player I like the most is Romeo Doubs. Like, I think he's got good touchdown equity. Kind of like that he stood up for himself, wanting to get more touches last year as well, because frankly, that bodes well for him fighting for more touches in a room where it's getting more crowded and there's more draft capital going to guys like Golden. But that's how I feel about it. Certainly, everybody has to. All right, Tyrone Tracy goes. Cam Scattaboo dealing with hamstring injury, so it's certainly a part of that. Guys we're falling right now, like Darnell Mooney, I do like in the spot. Dobbins, I would also not mind for RB4. And Caleb Williams is here as well. I'm going to go Caleb. I don't have enough time to track the board and see where Odunze went. I think he might have been on the opposite side of the board. Odunze went here, so I probably could have pushed Caleb. But frankly, on DraftKings, I just don't trust people at this point. Did a stream right before this, as I mentioned, on my Splash Play Pod channel where I did a DraftKings draft and got every QB sniped around the turn in that room. QB flies really hot and heavy because people panic about not getting a good QB on DraftKings. And in fact, people panic about not getting 3 QBs. I could still mostly play 2 QB lineups, but people really get obsessed with 3 QB lineups this year, and I don't think they don't do the draft capital correctly, but it's neither here nor there. If you're going to take 3 QBs, try to take, 1 late. Don't take all 3 in the prime window where you need to get some other positions. That said, I don't want to risk Caleb Williams not coming back, so I took him there. Frankly, I'm going to get a player that I've taken with the last pick anyway, so I think this is okay. But we got Baker Mayfield stacked. We got Caleb Williams stacked. Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 5, very comfortable with this. Mooney, in terms of how I view him, is functionally like a wide receiver 4. The shoulder injury he has right now, the uncertainty with that is scaring people off. But Mooney was a guy that last year I thought played pretty well over the totality of the season, with Kirk Cousins starting, with Penix starting. When Penix started, he did feed Drake London pretty aggressively. The target route run for him went up to like 35.7%, I think was the exact number. But basically went up to like a really incredibly high number. I'd say an untenably high number for Drake London. For Mooney, though, over the course of an entire season, he was targeted pretty well overall, 21.5% target per route run, had 1.4 deep targets a game. I think that goes up with Michael Penix, had a 0.33 EPA as well, so he was efficient with it. For Mooney, I really strongly believe he provides you leverage against Drake London for week 17. Again, trying to realize the expected value when the actual money's on the line in week 17. But for Mooney as well, I just think Penix's game style for him is going to work out pretty well because he's going to take a lot of shots downfield. Penix is an aggressive downfield thrower at one of the highest rates in college football when he left Washington. And now he's the starting QB for an Atlanta team that is on a pretty aggressive offense, has some aggressive play calling. Certainly, I think PPRing Drake London to death is a very likely outcome. Kyle Pitts had some steam in the offseason, so that can make you think less of Darnell Mooney. But the reality is that Darnell Mooney as a downfield target is going to get so much of a benefit from having London be a really threatening weapon underneath, from having Kyle Pitts, if he's good, be a threatening option underneath. Bijan, Algier in the run game. Like, that's a lot of stuff that sucks attention, back towards the line of scrimmage. And Mooney's really the only one who's going to be downfield doing aggressive, vertical, sacrificial X kind of routes. So I love Mooney. I just love Atlanta a lot as an offense. If Penix fails this year, I'll be pretty disappointed. Was not bullish on him last year because I thought he was pretty blocked by having Kirk Cousins there being paid big money. But when he played well. I think in particular on DraftKings, we have the 300-yard bonus. Like, I think Penix is a really important player this year. So that's how I feel about it. Caleb over Herbert. Harbaugh's going to get him protection finally. I mean, that's great for the run game in Omari and Hampton, I think. For Herbert, number one, the ADP is much lower. This room, obviously, he got taken there. But Herbert, 118 ADP. Caleb, 110. And I also have DJ Moore. So, yeah, like, even if you like Herbert more than I do, or you like Herbert more than Caleb Williams, when you have a DJ Moore bet, you've already made a bet on that team and that passing game. So you take a QB that's correlated with it. Taking an unstacked Herbert at this point is kind of foolish because basically at that point, you have to get Quentin Johnston. I guess you could maybe take Lambert Smith if you really think he's going to ascend the depth chart. But the parts of the offense that would succeed in parallel with Herbert are already gone. So not really a time to take Herbert, usually, unless he's a big ADP faller. So we have a 2-3-5-0 build here. Javonte Williams, still a pick I'm comfortable with. I know Jaden Blue's flashing a little bit in highlights and stuff like that. Ultimately, my big bet and one of my big beliefs in the season is that Dallas is going to be more of a boomer team running the ball than people want. People really expect an aggressive, high-octane pass game offense. But is a team that hired an offensive line coach as its OC. Team with Brian Schottenheimer, who's talked, the exact quote is that he said within the last week or so is that he wants to run the ball at people's asses. I assume not literally, but what if it's literal? but like, he wants to run the ball. It's a team that wants to run the ball. I am not sold that Jaden Blue is a bell cow back. I think he's got a great athletic profile, but he's another guy didn't flash a ton, at Texas that I'd be super stoked by. Not a high avoided tackle rate guy, not a terribly high EPA player. He's good. Like, he's a good player. And I think in year two, I'll probably like Jaden Blue a little bit more. But for right now, he's got to overcome two guys in Miles Sanders and Javonte Williams, are the exact kind of backs that a team like Dallas would give way too many touches to. So I'm cool taking Javonte still. Certainly your mileage may vary. But a 2-4-5-0 build here. Really don't think we need the third QB, but Michael Penix being here certainly is something that could add some more value to the room. Christian Kirk here is a nice click at this point. Nick Chubb's ADP got way too high for a dude getting terrible training camp reviews. Ramondre Stevenson is RB5. Ooh, we don't really need it. But I'm going to take Ramondre here. People really stoked about Travion Henderson, and I get it. I think there's a chance for him to be a James White type, a Deion Lewis type in that Josh McDaniels offense. And there were camp reports as well, I think yesterday, it was yesterday. Travion Henderson scoring 4 touchdowns in the red zone during practice, during a red zone period. 3 of them were receiving, 1 of them rushing. People are stoked about that. Henderson's going to be a good player, I think, and I think in PPR as well, more appealing to me than in half-point PPR. But I think for Ramondre, he's not going to be an unheard of part of this backfield. Again, this is a guy getting paid over $10 million this year, and he is that traditional kind of power back, even though people have viewed him as like the receiving back. He really isn't that at the stage of the game where he's got less juice in the pass game, and he's not as fast, not as nimble. Ramondre is still a bet at pick 136 here, going before Nick Chubb and Dylan Sampson. I think Ramondre is a very good click to have here. I know like Javonte and Ramondre are not really sexy, fun rookie clicks at this point. These are projectable players. And frankly, for a draft here on Stochastic, I want to build teams of projectable players. Ramondre feels a little better at 125 than 105. Kirk feels like a perfect PPR scam. I agree with both those points. I've said it many times on stream, but really I would say the guidepost historically is you want to have your fifth receiver, your pick 100. Some people would say for 7 rounds. I think that marker has moved a little bit, I think, with how RB capital is a little more necessary, in my opinion. But to me, if I don't get Christian Kirk or Marvin Mims as my wide receiver 5, I feel like the room is generally suffering a little bit more than I would want to. Those guys to me are absolute tier breaks of the position. Kyle Williams, I do sometimes wide receiver 5, Hollywood Brown, like I'll do it. But I really think to me, like if you don't have your group of 5 there at receiver, by the time you get to Kirk and Mims and ADP, one of those guys should be wide receiver 5, or your team is probably not good enough. At the receiver position, maybe everywhere else you're good, but got to get early receiver capital in. It looks like the drafter to my left might know what he's doing in the DK room. Let's see. Puka, Bowers, JSN. That's fun. Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker going top 40, basically. I like him. Rich new price for Kenneth Walker, though. Yeah, it's a perfectly balanced team. I don't know that stacks are there, but sure. We got Cam Ward here, Garendo here with his hamstring injury. 2550. I think I've taken Adam Thielen. Did 3 drafts on stream earlier. I took Adam Thielen in all of those. Unfortunately, I think Adam Thielen's going to make this team as well. Just feel like he's a nice little wide receiver 6 to add on in full point PPR. The RBs right now, none of them I feel like are a must-have at this spot. Tight end, we have a 20-round draft on DraftKings. I could take 4 tight ends and not feel bad about it. I feel like I'm doing like a Weight Watchers ad. You could snack on 4 tight ends and not even feel a care in the world. But that's how I feel about in a 20-round draft. So that's what we're going to try to do in this one. Romeo Dobbs goes. Dobbs going behind Thielen does feel a little bit weird. Let's see what these guys are doing. Really, they're thinking about it, taking the whole clock. They're legal right, but it doesn't help the stream. Jerome Ford goes. My preferred bet for Cleveland at running back, even though Cleveland, I think, is going to be a dog shit offense. Johnny Smith falling in rooms. I don't know. I don't think we really need RB at this point. Cam Ward, I don't know that he does enough for us. I do think Josh Palmer does a little bit more for us here. Palmer's still banged up, I guess. Let's see what the latest news is. Present for practice, but didn't practice on Sunday. Suited up, was an individual drill. So he's getting better. Josh Palmer had a groin injury. So he's rounding into form. Really, Josh Palmer is your biggest beneficiary for Khalil Shakir's injury right now. Not that that matters a ton to me either. Khalil Shakir with a high ankle sprain. He and Mason Taylor, 2 guys that have recently been diagnosed with that. Probably going to miss 4 to 6 weeks, I think is the estimate there. Shakir still thinks he'll be out there week 1, but apparently his route tree might be a little limited, which is not great for a guy like Shakir. But it doesn't really matter what happens in week 1. Like that's the big thing about best ball that people miss. Like, yeah, it's great if all your guys are in perfect condition. And like we were talking about earlier, if all the training camp reports are like so good and like, wow, the offense is amazing. That's what you want to hear. But also you're not really playing for preseason hype. You're not playing for preseason health. You're playing for week 17 health, and week 17 spiking enough to take down a tournament with 1,000 people in it on DraftKings. So it's the main thing you're trying to keep in mind here with all the training camp news as it goes. And that's a big part of what comes down to, like, do you follow all the news and, just kind of keep trying to chase thing to thing to thing? Or do you just have your overlying bets, your overarching bets that like the back of your hand? This is more my approach. And I try to let the news then dictate some stuff around, things like that. Like I've taken a lot of Joe Mixon and slow drafts this week because I'm going to absorb that injury risk. But if you're not, you can play it a different way. Let's give our team a read, though. We have a 2-5-7-0 build, so nothing at tight end, but we are going to add a lot of tight ends in terms of volume. We have Baker Mayfield, Christian McCaffrey, Ashton Jeanty. Again, a unique that was fairly pointed out. Less unique in the beginning of BBM, or start rather, it was less unique in the beginning of BBM. But right now, I think it is pretty unique to get these guys with the news cycle with where it is, the beginning of August. So McCaffrey and Jeanty is my RB start. Mike Evans, DJ Moore, Zay Flowers is a top 3. I think that works. Deebo Samuel backing up as wide receiver 4. I feel strongly about here. If a guy, I've said it on stream, I think he scores more than 10 touchdowns this year for the Commanders, as long as he's healthy. And frankly, I think the outlier outcomes of that might be higher than 10. Jordan Mason, Caleb Williams, part of my stack with DJ Moore. Darnell Mooney, Javonte Williams, Ramondre Stevenson, 2 guys that were just a little bit too cheap, going about 10 spots after ADP. Then we're rounding out the wide receiver room with guys that I think are pretty projectable. Adam Thielen and Josh Palmer. Not really sexy clicks, but for PPR, I think those guys will be in the hunt to give us 15 to 20 point games with some reliability monthly. I think it's probably the best outcome there. Early August is the season of NFL Bros. Reading about other dudes' groins. It's really a lot of injuries this time of year, and a lot of groin-based injuries as well. But it's a lot of stuff where it's like, just, I don't think matters that much. Like, guys going to tear their ACL coming up, I'm sure, in the preseason games. Like, that shit happens. That sucks. Those ones will matter a lot. Obviously, an ACL tear, an Achilles tear, those ones, that's done. It's over for those guys. But those injuries can happen still. But other ones where it's like mild injury, if it's not a hamstring, a serious hamstring injury, the last couple of weeks before the season, before training camp ends, I just don't think it's stuff to worry about. Mike Gesicki falling in rooms right now because of Noah Fant being added. I think I'd be comfortable taking him. Do you want to get a 6th RB in as well? But I don't think there's a spot to do it necessarily. So Gesicki, first tight end off the board. You're just going to load up on guys who could spike a tight end. This is my approach for the year when I'm not getting an elite guy to a Sam Laporta tier guy. Generally, I'm usually adding, even if I get like a Evan Ingram type, I'm doing 3 tight ends. If I'm getting like a Gesicki, Zach Ertz start, probably want to go to 4 tight ends and a 20-round draft. That's the way that I view it. Certainly could do whatever. Mason Taylor, high ankle sprain's real bummer. So much Fields to Taylor. Yeah, same thing. A lot of, 3 tight end builds. So I think I'll be able to survive him missing week 1, week 2. It is somehow landed on the pup list, which I would hope he doesn't, but I think I could survive that. For Mason Taylor, he was going to probably be a slow starter anyway, but the downside is that now he's got to come in and then probably still be a slow starter after that. I wasn't terribly wowed by his numbers coming out of LSU. Wasn't a great target earner there, but he got good draft capital. I'd still be willing to take him, but you better have 2 tight ends ahead of him, I think. All right, DeAndre Hopkins goes. Nothing crazy here. No crazy fallers or values. We got the Baker Mayfield stack. I'm not crazy about Cade Otton. I think he's just kind of one of the guys in this area here. But we have the Baker bet, so I will go Cade Otton here. Chig Okonkwo over Otton. Maybe an interesting bet for game theory, but it doesn't really matter. We'll take the correlation. Cade Otton, come on down. So 2 tight ends in a 2-5-7-2 build now. Definitely adding at least 2. I mean, at least 1 more tight end, but probably adding 2 more here. We've got Baker Mayfield, Christian McCaffrey, Ashton Jeanty as a start. Mike Evans, DJ Moore, Zay Flowers are top 3 at receiver. Mike Gesicki, our first tight end on the team, which is not nearly enough. And I'm not worried about Noah Fant for what it's worth, but he wasn't ever going to be a guy that could lead a tight end room competently anyway. Deebo Samuel, I think a strong wide receiver 4 for me. Jordan Mason, Caleb Williams, Darnell Mooney, Javonte Williams, Ramondre Stevenson, Adam Thielen, Josh Palmer, and Cade Otton. So I think decently balanced here. We've got 4 rounds left. Would like to add 1 more RB if I can, but I don't think I need to force it. I feel like I've got 5 guys with credible roles, and certainly the McCaffrey and Jeanty portion of things should be carrying most of the water. This is a rant I've done on many streams. The Ja'Cory Krosky merits of the world, I think a little bit overhyped the stage of things. If you haven't followed best ball for a few years, a couple years ago, a couple guys you might have heard of, Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams, literally lit the best ball world on fire in August. They completely changed the view of tournaments and how the entire thing worked, because both guys ended up being top 10 players in their position, might be closer to top 5. Both guys crushed basically their rookie year, and they were going for free across every site, going 20th round on DraftKings, going 18th round on Underdog. That was how it looked. They changed the entire complexion of what the season was in best ball. People now keep chasing that every year, and every year they want to have some like massive late riser. And the reality is the markets have gotten really efficient. I think this year There's definitely some contingent bets that are a little bit lighter than they should be. Guys like DJ Giddens, I'm not crazy about. But if Jonathan Taylor goes down, DJ Giddens is going to like break best ball this year. If that happens, if that first part of the parlay comes true, Jonathan Taylor gets hurt. For the most part, though, there aren't really guys I expect to make like a massive run up the board. And Krosky Merritt's not a guy with a lot of pedigree. He was okay when he played his last full year in college, was like somewhat efficient playing at New Mexico. Didn't play the highest level of competition because he was playing at New Mexico. Didn't avoid a ton of tackles there. Not enough for me to go like, oh, he beat the shit out of these lower tier guys. He might be great getting in. And also, the Commanders are a team that really trusted Brian Robinson, really trusted Austin Eckler last year. Give those guys a ton of high-value touches. They were safely ahead of the Jeremy McNichols of the world, and McNichols played well enough at one point when either Robinson or Eckler got hurt, and then they worked McNichols in a little bit more. But the reality is, like, top two is pretty strong. Krosky Merritt is at best a contingent bet. He's working in with the first team a little bit, but, like, him working in with the first team is like Kenneth Gainwell working in with the first team when he was on the Eagles. Like, it doesn't mean he's, like, a legit play, and I think that's where I view things very differently for some of the markets. 2572. This guy's one of my highest exposed players and has been for months. I think DraftKings is not, for whatever reason, he's not being captured in the upside at all here on DraftKings. Dyami Brown is getting paid about $10 million by the Jags. Was one of the first guys, and actually was the first guy this new regime coming to the Jacksonville signed. He's had great camp reports as well. So he's one of the guys to me that I don't get why there isn't steam on him, because he actually seems like he deserves it. We don't really need the wide receiver 8 as much as we'd probably do another tight end. But I think Dyami's too good of a buy at this point. So Dyami's my guy. A massive late riser joke. Yes, that's a joke for the Splash Plate Pod channel. But yes, we're known for many late risers, many boners here in our Splash Plate community. But shout out to all you guys watching live on Stokastic. Got a few more picks here. If you have anything you want me to talk about, any questions, drop them in chat. I'm happy to talk about anything that you want here, because we are actually making pretty good time this draft here. But we got a pick coming up. Isaac Tesla goes. I mean, I like Ja'Tavion Sanders a lot here. There are other players I could take, and I'm not going to say them out loud because I know we have a few guys watching the streams in the draft room. It's always how it goes. But I will take Ja'Tavion Sanders for tight end 3. Really good camp buzz for Ja'Tavion Sanders. Let's see if we have the news items on here. Sanders shining at training camp. He also lost some weight, which is not in this one, and apparently added muscle while losing the actual pounds. But he's been a really strong red zone target for Carolina. Eventually, I'd expect that Tet McMillan takes over, gets real meaningful red zone work, because he is the kind of guy with the athletic profile and a big enough body to do that and get some jump balls and stuff like that. But Ja'Tavion Sanders having the year of seasoning, I think he played pretty well last year. It wasn't anything special as a rookie, but I think flashed enough for me. He's had a pretty good drumbeat in the offseason. So him as tight end 3 here to round out this room where we just need to get some bodies in who can actually give us points. I like Sanders being tight end 3. And frankly, think down the home stretch as people catch up to the news items for him, if he keeps getting that same drumbeat he's gotten so far, he should probably be safely a top 18 pick. If not top 16 rounds pick, I think. Just a little bit surprised by Sanders not getting a bigger rise on DraftKings, much like Dyami Brown. So the team so far, we have, again, a 2-5-8-3. Sorry, I'm scrolling around too much. We got Baker Mayfield, Christian McCaffrey, Ashton Jeanty. Wide receiver, stacked up Mike Evans, stacked up DJ Moore with Caleb Williams. Zay Flowers is our wide receiver 3. I think that build works. Tight end is Mike Gesicki to start, which is definitely a little bit weaker. That's why we're adding more volume at tight end. Deebo Samuel, Jordan Mason, Caleb Williams, Darnell Mooney. Love the value we got on him as wide receiver 5. Javonte Williams, Ramondre. Think those guys are a little bit undervalued for being non-sexy players for sure, but guys that are probably going to have real roles for their team, as good as they are or not. Adam Thielen, Josh Palmer, Cade Otton, Dyami Brown, Ja'Tavion Sanders. I like this team. There are teams sometimes that I'm probably the only streamer that says it. There are times I draft a team on stream and it doesn't really hit the right notes, or I feel like it could have been a little bit better if I made 1 or 2 choices differently. This team, I think a lot of good stuff aligned for me. Like getting Josh Palmer where I did, I like that a lot. Torrey Horton coming all the way back would have been tempting for me. He is one guy, and I've said it. I don't think there is a Puka Nacua really in this group. Torrey Horton, if there is one in this group of all these shitty players in round 18, round 19, round 20, Torrey Horton's probably it. He's advanced up the depth chart for Seattle pretty fast. He's already ahead of MVS, who was starting with the first team, then got bumped down to the second team. Need to make a pick here, though, And I do think this is a good spot to get tight end 4. Darren Waller on pace to be ready week 1. Certainly a guy coming off retirement. I get people not loving the risk, not loving the fact that he hasn't practiced yet. And I'm not high on the Miami offense either, but Johnny Smith leaves a lot behind there. He had really meaningful red zone work last year, 1.1 red zone targets a game, 0.1 red zone rushes a game. The latter doesn't matter that much, but he got that work. He was targeted 27.5% of the time, which was a better rate than Tyreek was, than Jalen Waddle was as well. I don't expect Darren Waller coming off of retirement to be as good of a player as Johnny Smith was last year, but there's a lot of opportunity left behind. And if he's a tight end 4 here for me, and a bring back for week 17 with that Tampa Bay Miami week 17 correlation, I like getting Darren Waller. I don't mind Fannin. I think Fannin is an okay click. I mean, frankly, RB, there's really nothing left. Raheem Mostert, we already have the Jeanty bet, so I don't think I'm going to get the 6th RB. I could take Fannin too. Frankly, 5 tight ends is I'm willing to do it on the 20-round draft, and I think the team is solid enough. So Harold Fannin, come on down. Cole Kmet, they could have made sense as well if I want to do a 5th tight end. But I'll take requests from our guy Consigliere. He's one of my longest standing members of my Splash Play channel. So final team here at 3-5-8-5. Not going to find that build too often. But tight end was weak for me. Everything else was not. So that's the way that I build. Baker Mayfield, Christian McCaffrey, Ashton Jeanty. Again, liking how this looks up top. Mike Evans, DJ Moore, Zay Flowers, Deebo Samuel, Jordan Mason. I think this is the big thing to me is like everything around the tight ends is good to me. Like I love this receiver room with Evans, Moore, Flowers, Deebo. I like the QBs with Baker and Caleb. Obviously, you know, me willing to take the shitty parts of Chicago's preseason and all that. I just need guys that could fill in a tight end. And I got a lot of guys that are starters, but not very good and not going to be projected super well week to week. And then also Harold Fannin. But we got Gesicki at tight end, Jordan Mason, Caleb Williams, Darnell Mooney, Javonte Williams, Ramondre Stevenson, Adam Thielen, and Josh Palmer rounding out the receiver room along with Diami Brown. Then K. Dotton, Jatavian Sanders, Darren Waller, and Harold Fannin, who is getting some first team work. Not a guy I think will have the highest upside with Njoku still there. But right now, the Browns are starting out of the slot Jamari Thrash, which is kind of crazy to me. They've moved Judy out of the slot. It's been Judy and Tillman playing out wide. Still think in like 12 personnel, you get Judy and Tillman out there. But if they go 11, it might be Fannin playing more than you think. So I'll take the shot for Consigliere here. I like to see him though. I think it's the kind of team that I think only I'm building. I don't know. That's a good thing. I like how it's gone. If you guys have any questions, drop them in chat. But if not, I think we're just going to call it early here, and hopefully we'll get some views on YouTube after the fact. But number one, make sure to go draft on DraftKings right now. I will play the full legal ad from Greg Ehrenberg, who's back from vacation. Watch MLB Live Before Lock coming up at 6. Also, make sure to check out my @SplashPlay Pod channel while we're doing all the plugging here. For Splash Play, basically what I do is Tuesdays and Fridays right now, and I'll probably add, well, I'm going to add some more stuff on. But right now I'm doing what I call a Try Draft One, where I draft on DraftKings, of course, presenting sponsor here. Also draft on Underdog and Drafters, the 3 big sites out there. And I do that every Tuesday and Friday at 12 p.m. So it's a big thing I have going. Check it out. I'll drop a link to the video I just did on there. But really the big thing to me is like, you should play on DraftKings. You should play on all these sites to try to get your best shot at realizing your expected value in best ball. The more entries you put in, and it sounds like a grift when you say it like this, the more entries you put in, the better shot you have at something bubbling up and finishing well. And that's the reality for drafting in best ball. If you spend as much time obsessing over football like I do, playing on DraftKings, getting in those free entries as well. When you draft your first team for $20, you get a free entry right away. And that's 2 shots at $15 million right away. You know, for the price of 1, that shit matters. Getting the extra expected value by DraftKings giving you money back if you max it out. That matters as well. You get $300 in DK bucks if you max out the tournament. So take advantage of that stuff on DraftKings right now. Play over there and do that for yourself, but also check out me drafting on the other sites too. Play across every best ball site if you can. You know, your money should be spent first on DraftKings. Again, MLB Live Before Lock coming up at 6. I believe it's Greg and Eric coming up for that one. So watch that one and listen to this fine little video about DraftKings best ball from Greg Ehrenberg before we hop off.
It's best ball season, and DraftKings is giving all customers a can't-miss offer. Draft one, get one. Enter a lineup in the $15 million best ball contest for just $20, and you'll score another best ball ticket to play free for a share of $15 million, giving you a second chance to win big. Download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app now to draft your $20 best ball lineup to play for a share of $15 million and get a second ticket to play free for a share of $15 million. That's 2 chances to win big without ever setting your lineup again. Draft one, get one, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 18 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions do apply and void where prohibited. 1 per customer. Enter the Best Ball $15 million headliner contest by September 4th, 2025 to get 1 bonus entry. $20 entry fee required. Reward expires in 30 days. See terms at DraftKings.com/NFL-best-ball, sponsored by DraftKings.
If only you guys could see me during that ad where it's like, basically I start like shifting around a little bit and I lean back and then I realize it's still going and I'm like, all right, I got to get back in position. And then it's like, it's still going and I start stretching and and then it keeps going and I'm like, all right, I got to get ready again. And then it keeps going and I have to reset. It's like such a stupid bit on my end, but it makes me laugh that I'm doing that like an idiot as that goes on. Either way, shouts to DraftKings for putting on the show. They've been presenting the show all summer long, so please hit that like button. Please subscribe so DraftKings knows that there is some sort of value for their ad spend here on Stokastic all summer long doing best ball. I'll be back Thursday at 3 p.m. on here doing another DraftKings draft down my home stretch here to try to get about 75 entries in. 50 to 75 is my goal on DraftKings, so you should be playing on there. Check it out for yourself. You heard Greg Ehrenberg give you the good word, but do check that shit out. Check that shit out. I saw this chat from Consigliere, and check that shit out also applies. I appreciate all you guys watching. Hit that like button. You guys know the deal. Back on Thursday. Check out MLB Live Before Lock coming up in a few hours. Thank you guys for hanging out, whether it is on YouTube or Twitter. I'll see you guys again soon. Enjoy your days. Good luck. Go play some best ball on DraftKings. All right.